Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. Chapter 1. The Introduction. In the quiet town of Maplewood, nestled amidst the lush green valleys of the Midwest, life moved at a deliberate pace. The mornings unfolded with the sound of birds chirping and children shouting as they boarded the school bus. This seemingly idyllic setting belied an undercurrent of secrets that would soon surface, forever altering the narrative of the community. On one fateful autumn evening, the rustling leaves were disturbed by an ominous discovery near the banks of the Silver Creek. Local teenagers, searching for an adventure, stumbled upon a body partially obscured by the foliage. The chill in the air intensified as they realized it was not just a fallen tree branch they had found, but without a doubt a man's lifeless form. Panic rippled through their small group. When the police arrived, the scene was eerily still. Officers cordoned off the area, their radios crackling with urgency as they called for backup. The victim, later identified as 32-year-old Tom Ellis, had been a beloved teacher at the local high school. His absence would be felt deeply, leaving a void in the lives of students and colleagues alike. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the crime scene, detectives set to work. They meticulously combed through every inch of the area while gathering evidence, painstakingly aware of Maplewood's delicate fabric starting to fray. Rumors would emerge, friendships would be tested, and the search for justice would unfold amidst whispers of betrayal and long-held grudges that lingered within the town's history. Chapter 2. The Victim. Tom Ellis was more than a teacher. He was a mentor, a friend, and a pillar of the Maplewood community. From the moment he began teaching at Maplewood High School a decade earlier, he carved out a niche for himself in the hearts of his students. Known for his passion for history, Tom had a unique ability to make the past come alive, weaving magical tales from the dusty pages of textbooks. His classroom was a haven where curiosity thrived and questions were welcome. As news of Tom's death rippled through the town, memories poured forth. He had hosted after-school study sessions in the library, giving his time freely to those who struggled. He'd volunteered for countless community events, from organizing the annual fall festival to coaching the debate team. He was the kind of man who remembered names and birthdays, a genuine connection lived out with each kind word and deed. Members of the community had often remarked on his infectious enthusiasm for life, but behind the warmth of his smile, there were untold stories. Friends remembered moments of tension, whispers of discontent among a few students who felt overlooked or judged. His dedication to excellence sometimes made him a target for animosity. Recent rumors hinted at a burgeoning relationship with a fellow teacher, which had stirred prying eyes and set tongues wagging. As authorities delved into Tom's life, they gathered files dotted with accolades and pictures framing joyous moments. Yet, shadows loomed beneath those sunny smiles. Was there more to his life than the public persona he had so carefully crafted? As investigators sought to understand who Tom Ellis truly was, they encountered the complexities of not just a man, but a life intricately entwined with the narratives of those around him, the very people who now mourned his loss. Chapter 3. The Crime Scene. With the sun sinking behind the wooded horizon, casting eerie shadows across the Silver Creek, detectives began their thorough examination of the crime scene. The area was cordoned off with yellow tape, fluttering like warning flags in the chilling breeze. The soft gurgle of the water formed an unsettling backdrop as officers rifles through leaves and brush, looking for anything that might tell the story of Tom Ellis's final moment. Crime scene investigator Sarah Lane approached the site where Tom's body lay. She knelt down and focused her flashlight beam on the gruesome sight. His body, clad in a plaid shirt and khaki pants, was cold and lifeless, the glow of her light revealing ominous bruising around his neck, marks that suggested a violent struggle, telltale signs of a fight for survival. Beside him, the remnants of a nearby campfire smoldered, the charred wood a stark reminder of warmth and life, juxtaposed against the grim reality. Detectives searched for anything that could provide insights: a discarded cigarette pack, a broken watch, or even a misplaced shoe. They painstakingly sifted through the underbrush, combing for fibers or anything that could link a suspect to this tragic scene. Meanwhile, the coroner's team waited respectfully at the perimeter, their solemn faces indicating they understood the weight of the task before them. As Sarah gathered evidence, she documented every detail. The leaves were still slick with moisture from a recent rain, and the air was thick with an unsettling mixture of earthiness and dread. Each item collected was more than just debris. They could be clues leading to the truth. She felt a familiar weight in her gut. It was the weight of lives forever changed, of a community about to confront an unsettling reality. In the aftermath of the discovery, familiarity would soon twist into fear, igniting paranoia among the townspeople of Maplewood. The hunt for answers had just begun, but already the dark shadow of murder loomed large over the once peaceful town. Chapter 4. The early investigation. As darkness enveloped Maplewood, the initial shock of Tom Ellis's murder began to ripple outward. The following days saw the town consumed with apprehension and speculation. News stations from surrounding cities descended upon the community, their cameras capturing the somber faces of residents seeking answers. Nothing could prepare them for the revelations that lay ahead. Detectives Mateo Cruz and Ella Jenkins, assigned to the case, unfolded maps of the area in their precinct's dimly lit conference room. They meticulously marked the crime scene, mapping nearby access roads and known hangouts for teenagers in the area. Tom's life was intertwined with many. They needed to start by talking to those who had been closest to him. Interviews began soon after the discovery. Students, friends, and colleagues flocked to the school's gymnasium, where they would quietly provide accounts of their interactions with Tom. Each voice added pieces to the puzzle-faint recollections of concern over a late-night text exchange, a rumor of jealousy from a colleague who felt their accomplishments overshadowed by Tom's success. One particular student stood out: Sarah Whitaker, a sophomore who had flourished in Tom's history classes. Her voice trembled as she recounted a recent altercation in the hall, an incident with another student, a known troublemaker who often felt slighted by Tom's strict standards. This fleeting moment hinted at a darker undertone bubbling beneath the surface. Cruz and Jenkins were thoughtful during each session, noting sentiments of fear in the walls of Maplewood. Hyde shared anxiety felt by those becoming aware that their tight-knit community was harboring a deadly secret. The detectives would soon discover that beneath the guise of warmth, jealousy, and ambition, the town thrived on complexity and competition. With every interview, they began to understand how Tom's murder echoed deeper than mere violence, a reverberated through a tapestry woven from relationships, aspirations, and the shadows of resentment. Each thread unraveled reminded them that the answers they sought might not only point to a suspect, but back to the very heart of Maplewood itself. Chapter 5. The detectives combed through countless interviews, chasing leads that veered off into blind alleys and unanswered questions. Nothing felt certain, and time was slipping away. The first breakthrough appeared promising. A witness claimed to have seen a suspicious figure loitering near the creek the night of the murder. However, when detectives produced a sketch based on the witness's description, it bore little resemblance to anyone in town. Weeks passed with no further sightings, each suggestion and sighting that followed leading to more dead ends. Meanwhile, forensic evidence slowly trickled in, but much of it proved inconclusive. The fingerprints lifted from the scene matched multiple individuals, but none of them raised a flag for detectives. The lack of a definitive suspect only magnified the tension in the community. As fear settled in, so did an insidious undercurrent of accusation. Friends eyed each other with newfound suspicions. Silent questions gripped them. Who among us could have done this? Frustrated by the roadblocks, Cruz and Jenkins pursued the rumor about Sarah Whitaker's conflict with the troubled student, seeking to interview him further. But as they sought him out, they learned he had skipped town suddenly. Their potential lead evaporated just as quickly as it had materialized. With nights spent poring over case files blending into a haze of frustration, Cruz found himself awake at 2 a.m., undeterred. He contemplated the relationships around Tom. Swinging back to the school, the detectives dug deeper into Tom's personal life. His acquaintances who may have held grudges that hadn't surfaced during the interviews. As they adjusted their focus to examine not just Tom's professional relationships, but his private ones, new questions emerged. Hidden motivations, unspoken disputes, and obscure jealousy now loomed large in their investigation. Perhaps the truth they sought was buried deeper than they had ever anticipated. And in a community where everyone thought they knew one another, there was still much to uncover. Chapter 6. A break in the case. The atmosphere in the Maplewood precinct was tense, the air thick with the weight of unanswered questions. After weeks of dead ends and unfruitful leads, a breakthrough arrived when a tip came in from an unexpected source. An anonymous caller claimed to have overheard a conversation at the local diner, where late-night patrons often unraveled their secrets over greasy plates of fries and coffee. Cruz and Jenkins had learned that the diner was a hub for gossip, a place where students, teachers, and townspeople converged, sometimes sharing more than just meals. They rushed to the small establishment, its fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting a sterile glare on the otherwise cozy interior. The usual clientele huddled in booths, whispers and chuckles echoing softly, in contrast to the heaviness of their investigation. Following the lead, they approached a waitress named Lily, a local high school graduate who knew many of the town's secrets. With hesitant encouragement, she shared what she had heard. A heated argument between two patrons, a teacher and a former student, where names were exchanged and harsh words thrown about Tom's teaching style. Former student, a boy named Jake Henderson, had once thrived in Tom's classes, but as his grades slipped, Jake felt the sting of disappointment and shame. Witnesses had noted a transformation in him after Tom had intervened, encouraging him to seek additional help. Crowned with both resentment and admiration, Jake's emotional turmoil may have driven a wedge between him and his mentor. Cruz and Jenkins swiftly gathered background information on Jake, only to find further troubling detail. Complaints against his erratic behavior had surfaced, in recent months' arguments with friends, expulsions from the school's extracurricular activity. Suspicion grew as they delved deeper into his last known whereabouts and relationships with other troubled students. As they placed the pieces together, Cruz felt a flicker of hope. He glanced at Jenkins, who met his gaze with a determined nod. Although it was still far from a definitive answer, Jake's connection to the case began to illuminate a path they could follow. The thread they had unraveled felt tantalizingly close. The detectives knew they had to approach Jake carefully. The key to understanding Tom's death may lie hidden in the volatile emotions of a young man struggling with his past. A delicate dance awaited them, a cautious step into the turmoil of Maplewood's heart. Chapter 7. The Suspect. With a sense of urgency propelling them, Cruz and Jenkins arranged to meet Jake Henderson at the Maplewood High School parking lot one afternoon. The sun hung high as they ambled through the rows of parked cars, the sound of laughter from an after-school soccer practice drifting through the air. They spotted Jake, leaning against a battered pickup truck, his posture sullen, hands shoved deep into his pockets. When he noticed them approaching, a flicker of apprehension crossed his face, the telltale sign of a boy accustomed to scrutiny. Cruz introduced himself as a detective, noting that they wanted to ask him some questions about his relationship with Tom Ellis. Jake's response was guarded, but he reluctantly complied, sliding into the back seat of Cruz's unmarked car. "Why are you here?" he mumbled, keeping his eyes focused on the passing cars outside, rather than looking the detectives in the eye. Cruz began the conversation gently, discussing Tom's influence on students, pointing out the sense of pride many felt as a result of his guidance. Jake's initial wall of silence was thick, but as Cruz pressed further, he began to crack, recounting his struggles in school, the fear of disappointing his family, the shame of his declining grade. The name of Tom Ellis lingered on his tongue, laden with resentful undertone. As Jenkins leaned forward, she asked directly about any encounters Jake might have had with Tom before his death, probing the emotional undercurrents that echoed through their interactions. It didn't take long before Jake began to fidget, his fingers tapping nervously against the fabric of his clothes. "Things got heated," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "He thought I needed to man up and take responsibility, but all I felt was pushed away." The tension in the vehicle escalated as they pressed him for specifics about the last time he encountered Tom. Jake hesitated, his defenses springing back up as he claimed he had no idea who might have hurt the teacher. But the flashes of anger in his eyes told a different story. The depth of his frustration simmered just beneath the surface. Cruz and Jenkins exchanged a glance, noting that they were on to something. But it was evident Jake was withholding more than he was sharing. He feared the consequences of his emotions, yet the pain and betrayal he felt seemed to hold a truth they desperately needed. They left the meeting with a mix of determination and concern, aware that Jake might be both a victim of his own choices and a potential suspect, a boy caught in the crosshairs of ambition, disappointment, and tragedy. The deeper they delved into his psyche, the more they sensed that fear and anger could reveal secrets capable of shattering the quiet isolation that was Maplewood. Chapter 8. The Trial. As winter's chill settled over Maplewood, the atmosphere in the town morphed, turning from shock to simmering tension as the trial date approached. The community, once a tight-knit refuge, had become a cauldron of divided loyalties and hushed conversations. With Jake Henderson charged in the murder of Tom Ellis, every eye was trained on the courtroom, waiting to witness the unveiling of the truth. The old courthouse stood stoically, its weathered facade a stark reminder of the history that unfolded within its wall. On the morning of the trial, people gathered outside, an uneasy crowd murmuring about the case that had caught the town's attention. Reporters jostled for a prime spot, cameras poised and eager to catch every moment. Inside, Cruz and Jenkins settled into the back row as the proceedings began. The judge's gavel echoed through the chamber, silencing the anxious whispers. Jake sat at the defendant's table, appearing smaller than ever, his youth stark against the gravity of his situation. He occasionally glanced at the jury, eyes filled with uncertainty and fear, as the prosecution laid out its case with calculated precision. An array of witnesses took the stand. Tom's colleagues offered heartfelt testimonies about his commitment to education, while some students echoed sentiments of admiration tempered with jealousy, a complicated dynamic that underlined his character. The prosecution sought to paint Jake as a troubled youth, a boy pushed too far into darkness by an unforgiving mentor who had once challenged him to rise above the constraints of his circumstances. The defense countered, suggesting that Tom's intentions had been noble, but not always nurturing. Jake's defense attorney emphasized that the emotional burden placed on the young man was immense, creating an environment ripe for conflict. They sought to highlight the complexity of adolescence, the questions of loyalty and anger that often followed misguided guidance. As Graham, a classmate of Jake's, took the stand, he recalled one particular night leading up to Tom's death. His testimony revealed a confrontation where Jake had confronted Tom about his dwindling grades, a moment of raw emotion fueled by shame that sparked a heated argument. One that ended starkly. I'll show it. The courtroom held its breath, sensing the weight of the words. Could this misguided frustration possibly have led to violence? The atmosphere shifted palpably as Jake's expression morphed from one of anger to despair. Was he truly just a victim of circumstance, or did his latent rage manifest in a fateful, irreversible act? As the trial progressed, the complexity of the case intensified, leaving the jury and townspeople grappling with their feelings about justice, accountability, and the haunting realization that, in a place where dreams were built, nightmares could take root just as readily. Tom had touched lives, but with every testimony, the shadow of what could have led to his tragic end loomed larger. The verdict approached, and the heart of Maplewood braced itself for the outcome, a reflection of not just Jake's fate, but the town's own reckoning with unresolved truths. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. The gavel fell, echoing through the solemn courtroom, sealing Jake Henderson's fate. The jury's verdict reverberated through Maplewood, a community already scarred by the tragedy of Tom Ellis's murder. A conviction for manslaughter rang aloud, the choice between culpability and understanding falling heavily on Jake's young shoulders. Some residents felt a collective sigh of relief, believing justice had been served, while others whispered of the complexities that had led to that moment in court. Their beliefs in disarray. As the news spread through the town, reactions rippled like stones cast into water. Parents embraced their children a little tighter, wary of the hidden battles waged in silence. Teachers avoided conversations about a man who was once lauded, now remembered in the same breath as violence and loss. The school, once a sanctuary of learning, became a landscape marked by emptiness and questioning. It was popular opinion that Tom's untimely death ushered in awareness, but also fear of what lay hidden behind closed doors. In the weeks following the trial, a palpable tension hung in the air. Cruz and Jenkins reflected on the case, dissecting each layer of the investigation. They struggled with the aftermath of the verdict. A sense of closure felt almost unattainable when intertwined with the reality that the town would always bear the scars of Tom's murder. They wondered if the trial's outcome would foster healing or deepen an already existent divide. In the wake of the tragedy, an unexpected movement began. Students started gathering at the school to discuss their feelings, a collective effort to address mental health and emotional well-being in a once-ignored dialogue. Forums cropped up, providing safe spaces for students to navigate their fears and anxieties. Addressing the elephant in the room, the pressures that had inspired such turmoil. Perhaps what arose from this corruption of youth was a glimpse of Hopi's determination to ensure that no one felt alone in their struggles. Hotlines were established, and speaker programs brought in experts to tackle the layers of insecurity that shadows young minds. The community leaned into the discussions, seeking to nurture a culture of empathy rather than judgment. Yet within the gust of proposed change, the empty space where Tom had once stood remained. The lessons of empathy and compassion came wrapped in the heavy burden of grief, reminding the town that each choice, each word spoken or unsaid, lived with consequences. As time wore on, Maplewood stood at a crossroads, choosing whether to retreat into the safety of habit or embrace the challenging growth that came in the wake of such profound loss. For many, the journey mirrored that of a seed breaking through hard soil, a difficult emergence into light, marred by the promise of something beautiful just beneath the surface. And perhaps through the pain, they could forge a way forward together, carefully weaving together newfound resilience, informed by the shadows of their past. Chapter 10. Reflection. Months passed as the seasons changed, and the air around Maplewood grew heavier with memories layered on top of one another. The echoes of court proceedings faded, but the emotions remained vivid, a tapestry of grief, anger, and newfound understanding woven into the very fabric of the town. Each resident carried a small piece of the tragedy with them, their perceptions crisscrossing the lines between right and wrong. Cruz and Jenkins sat over coffee one rainy afternoon, sharing reflections on the case. They pondered Tom Ellis, the devoted teacher who had profoundly impacted so many lives, leaving an indelible mark even after his death. They considered Jake, a young man marked by the choices of youth. "I can't help but think if we had done things differently," Cruz murmured, staring out at the rain-drenched street. "What if we had known sooner?" "I think that's the risk of all this," Jenkins replied thoughtfully. "The reality is, we can't change the past, but we can learn from it. Tom's life and death can't be in vain." As they spoke in the school and diner, students and townsfolk began to share their own stories of struggle. The town was moving toward a reckoning. Forums flourished, and the whispers of risk transformed into discussions of resilience. It wasn't just about finding answers anymore. It was about understanding the fabric of their community. Healing was a journey, and while scars usually fade with time, they also hold lessons, reminders of empathy, the weight of choice, and the importance of connection. They became reminders that in life, a complicated, messy existence, reaching out can be the very thing that saves another from darkness, that ignites a flicker of hope, and that enables people to stand not just as individuals, but as a united front, capable of overcoming the shadows. As Maplewood continued to evolve, the essence of compassion and understanding began to flourish, breathing life and purpose into a once fractured existence. Those whispers of vulnerability became symphonies of strength, echoing throughout the town, a new beginning born from an unthinkable tragedy.